There are moments in life when everything feels uncertain, when the world around us seems to be spiraling out of control, and we question whether the path we're on is the right one. You may feel the weight of your decisions, unsure if you're walking in the direction you're meant to go. Yet deep down inside there's a whisper, a gentle urging that tells you there is a plan greater than what your eyes can see. But how long will you wait before you surrender to that call? The truth is, you cannot afford to wait forever. Life is fleeting and the moments to embrace God's direction are ticking away. In this very moment, you must make a choice. Will you trust the one who created you, or will you continue trying to navigate your life on your own terms? Let's take this journey together and let's uncover the truth about God's perfect plan for your life. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to hear could change everything. Have you ever asked yourself why you are here? Why you are in this place, this season of your life? We all come to a crossroads, a moment when we stop and ask, why me? Perhaps in your darkest hour, you've questioned your existence, your purpose, and whether any of it even matters. The truth is, you are not here by accident. No, your life has been orchestrated by a plan far beyond your own understanding. But you see, in the face of challenges, in the midst of trials, and in the midst of our human struggles, it's easy to forget this simple truth: God has a plan. But what does this mean for us as individuals trying to make sense of a world that seems so confusing? What does it mean when life doesn't seem to align with what we thought it would be? When the desires of our hearts are unmet, when dreams feel unfulfilled, when prayers seem unanswered, how do we hold on to hope? This is where the challenge lies, the moment when we are asked to trust God's plan, even when it doesn't make sense. God's plans for us are not subject to our understanding. They are not limited by our perceptions of what is right, just, or even possible. He sees the entire tapestry of our lives, the beginning, the middle, and the end, while we are stuck at the halfway point. Imagine standing in a room filled with puzzle pieces scattered everywhere, and you have no idea what the final picture will look like. But God, He knows exactly how every piece fits together. He's already seen the finished work. You are not lost, my friend, though it may feel like it. You are exactly where He wants you to be. Think about the lives of the great men and women of the Bible: Abraham, Moses, David, Esther, people who were called by God to carry out His plans. Yet at each stage of their journey, they had to make choices. Choices that would either align them with God's purpose or lead them away from it. They weren't perfect, far from it. Yet in every decision, in every moment of doubt, they chose to trust God's plan over their own. They didn't see the end result, but they believed in the one who held the future in His hands. Abraham was promised a son in his old age, and though it seemed impossible, he trusted. Moses, chosen to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, had doubts about his own abilities, yet he obeyed the call. David, anointed king but living as a fugitive, was faced with unimaginable trials, yet he continued to rely on God's plan. Even Esther, in the face of a genocidal decree, had to trust that God had placed her in her position for such a time as that. Their lives show us one thing clearly: God's plan is not always easy, but it is always worth it. Now, you may be asking, how do I trust when I don't understand? How do I surrender to something I cannot see? The answer is simple, but it requires us to embrace something powerful: faith. Faith isn't just about believing that God can do something, it's about believing that He is doing something, even when we can't see it with our eyes. It's trusting that He is working, even when all we see is silence and waiting. Faith is the bridge between where you are now and where God wants to take you. Without it, you remain stuck, held captive by your doubts, fears, and insecurities. But with faith, you can move mountains. With faith, you can step out of the boat, even if you're walking on water in the midst of a storm. With faith, you can face the uncertainty of the future and walk confidently in God's plan, knowing that He will never leave you nor forsake you. And here's the truth you need to hear: God's plan for you is better than anything you could ever plan for yourself. You may think you know what's best, You may have your dreams and your desires, and there's nothing wrong with having goals, but the question is this: are you willing to lay them down and say, God, not my will, but your will be done? This is the surrender that leads to peace, the surrender that opens the door to a life filled with purpose, hope, and divine fulfillment. Now, I know you've heard this before, but the question is, will you act on it? Will you embrace the truth that God's plan is the best plan for your life, even when it doesn't seem easy? The moment you decide to trust His plan, you are stepping into something greater than yourself. You are stepping into the fulfillment of your purpose, the very reason you were created. Your life is not just a series of random events. Your life is part of a divine plan that spans eternity, and God has chosen you to be a part of it. There is no greater calling than to be in alignment with God's will. And the good news is you don't have to figure it all out on your own. You have a Heavenly Father who is with you every step of the way. He knows the path you need to walk, the decisions you need to make, and the timing of every season in your life. All you have to do is trust Him. Trust that He is leading you in the right direction, even when it feels like you're taking a detour. Trust that every setback is setting you up for something greater. Trust that He will provide, protect, and guide you as you step into His purpose for your life. But here's the challenge: you must act in faith. Faith without action is dead. You can say you trust God, but it's your actions that prove it. God's plan for you won't be fulfilled if you remain passive, waiting for something to happen. No, you have to move. You have to make decisions based on what God has spoken to you. If He says to step out, then step out. If He says to speak, then speak. If He says to forgive, then forgive. Each act of obedience is a step closer to the fulfillment of God's plan for your life. There's a danger in waiting too long. You may miss the opportunity that God is presenting to you right now. The longer you wait, the more you risk missing out on the blessings, the growth, and the transformation that God has prepared for you. When God calls you, don't hesitate. Don't second guess yourself. Don't allow fear to hold you back. Trust His plan, even when it's hard, and step into the life He has destined for you. There is no time to waste. The world is waiting for you to take your place. Your family is waiting for you to be the example of faith they need. Your community is waiting for you to rise up and walk in your purpose. Your generation is waiting for the power of God to manifest through your life. Will you answer the call? You may not have all the answers, and you may not understand how it will all unfold, but that's where faith comes in. Trust that God's timing is perfect, and He will make all things beautiful in His time. No matter where you are today, no matter what you've been through, trust that He is still working. He is still leading. He is still shaping you into the person He created you to be. So I ask you today, what will you do with the plan God has for your life? Will you trust Him, or will you continue trying to figure it out on your own? The choice is yours. But remember, you are never alone in this journey. God is with you, and He has already gone before you. His plan for your life is waiting for you to step into it. It's not too late. God is still calling you. Will you trust His plan? Trusting God's plan for your life is not always the easiest path to walk, especially when the road ahead seems unclear. We often find ourselves standing at a crossroads, unsure whether we should move forward, turn back, or take a different route entirely. In these moments of uncertainty, it's easy to fall prey to fear, doubt, and worry. We question our decisions, our worth, and our purpose. But the truth is, even in our confusion, and even when we cannot see the full picture, God is at work. And His plan for your life is unfolding in ways that you may not even recognize. There is something powerful about surrendering to God's will. Surrender is not about giving up, but rather giving in to the one who knows the best way forward. We are all called to live by faith, to walk not by what we can see, but by trusting in the unseen hand of God guiding us. Faith doesn't require us to have all the answers or to understand every twist and turn in the journey. It only requires that we trust the one who knows the way. Sometimes we want to control everything. We want to dictate the timing, the outcomes, and the circumstances. We believe that if we can plan and strategize enough, we can make things happen according to our own desires. But God doesn't work that way. His ways are higher than our ways, and His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. His understanding far exceeds ours. And sometimes when we think we're walking down the wrong path, God is leading us exactly where we need to go. Every step of the way, God is teaching us, shaping us, and preparing us for something greater than we could ever imagine. It's not just about trusting God when things are going well. It's about trusting Him when everything is falling apart. When your dreams seem to be shattered, when you face rejection, when doors close in your face, and when everything around you seems uncertain, that's when your faith is truly tested. Will you still trust that God has a plan for your life even in those dark moments? Will you hold on to the truth that He is in control, even when it feels like your world is spinning out of control? God's plan is not always the easy path, but it is always the best path. Think of Joseph, who was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, and falsely imprisoned. Yet, even in the midst of his trials, Joseph never lost faith in God's plan. He held on to the belief that God had a purpose for his life, even when everything seemed to be going wrong. And in the end, Joseph's faith was rewarded. God used him to save nations, and his story became a powerful testament to the fact that God's plan is always worth trusting. The same is true for you. When you find yourself in a season of waiting, of hardship, or of uncertainty, know that God is at work behind the scenes. Just because you don't see immediate results doesn't mean that God isn't moving. His timing is perfect, and He has a plan for every season of your life. The waiting may be difficult, but it's during those times that He is refining you, preparing you for the future that He has in store for you. In moments of doubt, it's easy to believe that God has forgotten you or that His plan is not unfolding in the way you imagined. But I assure you, He hasn't forgotten you. He has not abandoned you. His plan for your life is far greater than anything you could ever hope or dream for yourself. His ways are beyond our understanding, but His love for you is unshakable, and His promises are sure. Do not be afraid to trust Him. Do not be afraid to surrender. Surrendering is not about weakness, it is about strength. It takes courage to let go of control and trust in God's plan. It takes humility to acknowledge that God knows better than we do. And it takes great faith to believe that His plan is unfolding, even when we cannot see the outcome. But remember, faith is not about seeing the whole picture, it's about trusting that God sees the whole picture, even when we can't. One of the most difficult things we face is the need for control. We want to have everything figured out. We want to know what the future holds, and we want to be prepared for whatever comes next. But God doesn't promise us that we will have all the answers. He promises us that He will never leave us nor forsake us. He promises that He will guide us along the way. And He promises that His plan for our lives is good, even when we can't see the end result. There are times when we want to rush God's plan, when we want to force things to happen according to our timeline. But God's timing is perfect, and His plan is always right. It may not come in the way we expect, and it may not happen as quickly as we hope, but it will happen in His time. And His timing is always perfect. We may have to wait, but in that waiting, God is shaping us, refining us, and preparing us for what is ahead. We are being transformed into the people He has called us to be. The question you must ask yourself today is this: do you trust God's timing? Do you trust that He is working even when you cannot see it? Do you trust that His plan for your life is unfolding even when it feels like nothing is happening? The journey of faith is not about seeing everything clearly, it's about trusting that God is in control. It's about walking step by step. Trusting that each step you take is part of the greater plan He has for your life. God's plan is not just about you, it's about the people around you. Your life has a ripple effect. The decisions you make, the faith you walk in, the way you live out God's plan for your life, all of it impacts the world around you. Your life is meant to be a testimony of God's faithfulness. Your story is meant to inspire others to trust in His plan, to have faith in His timing, and to surrender their lives to His will. There are people waiting for you to step into your destiny. There are people waiting for you to trust God's plan so that they can see what God can do in and through you. Your obedience to God's call on your life has the potential to change the lives of those around you. When you trust His plan, you become a vessel through which His love, grace, and power can flow. Now, some of you may be wondering, what if I've made mistakes along the way? What if I've missed the opportunity? What if I've gone off course? The good news is that God is bigger than your mistakes. He is bigger than your past. He is bigger than your regrets. And He can redeem any situation. No mistake is too big for God to fix. He has the power to turn your failures into stepping stones, your setbacks into comebacks, and your pain into purpose. It doesn't matter how far you've strayed or how many wrong turns you've taken. God is able to redirect you. He is able to restore the years that the locusts have eaten. He is able to make all things new. His plan for your life is not thwarted by your mistakes. His love for you is greater than any mistake you've made, and His grace is sufficient to cover all your shortcomings. You see, God's plan for your life is bigger than your ability to mess it up. His grace is greater than your sin. His mercy is more abundant than your failures. All you need to do is trust Him. Trust Him with your past, your present, and your future. Trust Him with the decisions you've made, the mistakes you've made, and the lessons you've learned along the way. When you trust Him, He takes all of that and turns it into something beautiful. God doesn't waste anything. Not your pain, not your failures, not your brokenness. He uses it all for His glory and for the good of those who love Him and are called according to His purpose. Every part of your story is part of His plan. Even the things that seem like obstacles, even the things that don't make sense, He will use them for His glory and for the fulfillment of His perfect plan for your life. So I ask you again, will you trust God's plan for your life? Will you surrender to His will and allow Him to lead you into the future He has prepared for you? It's not too late. It's never too late. God is still in the business of fulfilling His promises. He is still in the business of making all things new, and He is still in the business of turning lives around. Trust His plan. Trust His timing. Trust His faithfulness. Your best days are ahead of you, but you must be willing to step into the unknown, knowing that God is already there, preparing the way. The future is bright, and God is calling you to walk boldly into the life He has prepared for you. When you truly trust God's plan for your life, it will transform the way you view the world. It will change the way you see your challenges, your relationships, and your purpose. You begin to realize that you are not just living for yourself, but for a greater purpose, one that is connected to God's divine plan for the world. Every moment, every decision, every step you take becomes part of a bigger picture that you may not fully comprehend right now, but it is part of a picture that God sees clearly. One of the most powerful revelations that comes with trusting God is the understanding that He is not bound by time. While we may look at our lives and see a series of fragmented moments, God sees it as a whole. He sees the end from the beginning. When we trust His plan, we are choosing to align our lives with the eternal perspective that God holds. We stop measuring our worth or success based on earthly timelines and start seeing everything through the lens of eternity. We begin to live with the knowledge that God is orchestrating every detail of our lives according to His purpose, and that His purpose is far greater than anything we could have imagined for ourselves. It's easy to get caught up in the pace of life, to feel like we're running out of time, like we need to achieve everything now, but God doesn't work in urgency the way we do. His plan unfolds at the perfect pace, not according to our deadlines, but according to His perfect timing. Our tendency is to rush ahead, to try to make things happen on our own, but that's when we miss out on the beautiful unfolding of God's purpose. He calls us to trust in His process, to wait patiently as He works, knowing that each step is leading us to where we are supposed to be. In moments of doubt, it's natural to wonder if we've missed something, if we've taken the wrong path, or if we're too far behind where we should be. But God is not a God of accidents. He does not waste a single step. Even if you find yourself in a place where you feel lost or uncertain, trust that God is using that time to refine you. He is using that time to grow you in ways you may not understand, but He is preparing you for what is coming. Every trial, every hardship, and even every success is part of His perfect plan. His plan is designed to bring you closer to Him and to prepare you for the blessings that lie ahead. We live in a world that demands instant gratification. We're taught to go after our goals with urgency and to make things happen as quickly as possible. But God's ways are different. His process is about trust, patience, and surrender. When we're willing to surrender our plans and desires to Him, we make room for His perfect will to unfold. We begin to see that we don't have to force things to happen. Instead, we must lean into His timing and trust that His plan is always worth the wait. Sometimes trusting God's plan for your life means waiting in seasons of uncertainty. It means walking through times when the future is unclear, when the path is foggy, and when it feels like you're standing still. But let me remind you that even when you cannot see the way, God is moving. Even when it feels like nothing is happening, God is still working behind the scenes. He is working in your heart, preparing you for the breakthroughs that are coming. Trust that even in the quiet moments, God is still at work. He is using your waiting to shape your character, deepen your faith, and strengthen your trust in Him. Another aspect of trusting God's plan is letting go of our own control. We all have our own vision of how we want our lives to turn out. We make plans, set goals, and expect things to unfold in a particular way. But God's plan may look different than what we envisioned. It may not come with the comfort or security we imagined, but it will come with purpose. The Bible tells us that His ways are not our ways and His thoughts are not our thoughts. This is the beauty of God's plan. It is always higher, always greater, and always more fulfilling than anything we could have planned for ourselves. As you walk through life, you will encounter moments when God asks you to take a leap of faith, when He calls you to step into the unknown and trust that He is with you. These moments can feel intimidating, even terrifying at times, but they're often the very moments that lead to the greatest breakthroughs. God will never lead you where His grace cannot sustain you. When He calls you to move, He will equip you for the journey. Trust that He knows what He is doing and that His plan is always for your good. You may not see the end result right now, but if you trust Him, He will lead you step by step. One of the most profound lessons I've learned is that trusting God's plan requires an attitude of humility. It requires us to let go of our own pride, to acknowledge that we don't have all the answers, and to submit to God's will. Humility is the key to surrender. It's not about us getting our way, but about allowing God to have His way in our lives. When we humble ourselves before God, we make room for His plan to unfold in our lives. We stop trying to force things to happen and begin to trust that His plan is perfect, even when it doesn't make sense in the moment. Trusting God's plan also means trusting in His provision. There will be times when you feel like you're lacking, whether it's resources, support, or strength, but God promises to provide. He promises to supply all your needs according to His riches in glory. He has already equipped you with everything you need to fulfill His purpose for your life. Trust that He will provide for you in every season, in every circumstance. When you feel weak, He is your strength. When you feel weary, He is your rest. When you lack wisdom, He will give you the understanding you need. God's provision is not limited by your circumstances, it is limitless, because He is the creator of all things. You may wonder how to know if you're truly trusting God's plan for your life. The answer is simple. Trust is shown in obedience. Trust is shown in action. It's not just about saying that you trust God's plan, it's about living like you believe it. When you trust God, you obey His leading even when it's difficult. You follow His voice even when you don't have all the answers. You take the next step even when you're not sure what the outcome will be. Trusting God means stepping out of your comfort zone and moving forward with faith, even when the path ahead is unclear. There may be moments when God calls you to make bold moves, to take risks that don't make sense in the natural. But remember, God's plan is never confined to human logic. He sees things from an eternal perspective, and sometimes His plan requires us to step out of our comfort zones and walk by faith. When you trust God, you don't need to have all the answers. You just need to trust that He knows what He's doing. You need to trust that He is leading you exactly where you need to be. As you continue to walk with God, you'll begin to see how His plan unfolds in your life in ways that are far greater than you could have imagined. The path may not always be easy, but it will always be worth it. You may face struggles, hardships, and opposition along the way, but know that God is with you. He will never leave you or forsake you. He is faithful, and He will see you through to the end. Trust in His plan, and you will experience the fulfillment and peace that comes from walking in alignment with His will. The journey of trusting God's plan is not always easy, but it is always worth it. God's plan for your life is filled with purpose, and when you trust Him, you will begin to see the incredible ways He is working in your life. Keep your eyes on Him, stay faithful, and trust that He is leading you to a future filled with hope, peace, and fulfillment. God's plan for your life is greater than anything you could have planned for yourself, and when you trust Him, you will experience the fullness of His purpose for your life. As you continue on this journey, one thing becomes abundantly clear: God's timing is always perfect. We often find ourselves trying to rush through life, desperately trying to get to the next milestone, the next achievement, or the next level of success. But God's timing is not based on the pressures of the world around us. His timing is designed to perfect us, to prepare us for the blessings He has prepared. What seems like a delay in your life is often God's divine orchestration at work. He's protecting you, refining you, and setting up circumstances that will allow you to step into your purpose in the most powerful way possible. Trusting in God's timing means that we need to release our need for control. It means surrendering our desires to Him and recognizing that He knows what is best for us. There will be times when you feel like you're waiting forever. You might feel stuck in a situation that seems to have no end, and your patience may wear thin. But these are the moments when your faith is being tested, when God is calling you to dig deeper, to hold on just a little longer, and to trust that what He has for you is worth the wait. One of the greatest lessons we learn through trust is understanding that God's plan is often more complex and far-reaching than we can comprehend in the moment. You may feel that you're in a season of struggle, but what if that struggle is preparing you for something greater? What if God is using your pain, your heartache, your disappointments to strengthen you for what is ahead? There are countless examples throughout Scripture of individuals who had to endure hardship and struggle before stepping into their destiny. Joseph was thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and imprisoned before becoming second in command in Egypt. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before leading the Israelites to freedom. Each of these individuals endured what seemed like delays, but in reality they were in the exact place they needed to be to fulfill their divine purpose. What we must understand is that trust isn't just about waiting, it's about what we do while we're waiting. God isn't asking us to sit passively, but to actively trust in His plan. This means we continue to move forward, to walk by faith, even when we can't see the full picture. We continue to worship, to pray, to serve, and to seek Him with all our hearts. Even in the moments of waiting, we are to be actively engaged in the work He has called us to do. One of the most profound truths in trusting God's plan is knowing that He never wastes a moment. Every moment of your life is significant to Him. Even when you feel like you're not making progress, when it seems like you're standing still, God is at work in the hidden places. It may seem like you're not where you want to be, but if you look closely, you'll see that you are exactly where God needs you to be in this season. Your current situation, no matter how frustrating it may feel, is preparing you for the next step. The experiences you are going through right now, no matter how painful, are shaping you into the person you need to be for your future. The journey of trust is also a journey of surrender. It is the conscious choice to lay down our plans and desires at the feet of the Father, knowing that His way is the best way. Surrender doesn't come naturally to us because we are conditioned to want control. But the truth is, when we try to control everything, we limit what God can do in our lives. We can't see the bigger picture, but God can. And He is calling us to trust Him with the details, to release our hold on the things that we cannot control and place them in His hands. Surrender is not a one-time event, it's an ongoing choice. Every day we are called to surrender our will to God's, to trust that His way is better than our own. It's in the daily act of surrender that we experience the peace that comes with knowing that God is in control. We are reminded that we are not the ones who have to make things happen. God is the one who is orchestrating every step of our lives. When we let go of our need to control, we open ourselves up to the abundant life that God has promised us. But here's where it gets powerful. Trusting God's plan is not just about the future, it's about the present. So often we focus so much on what's coming next that we fail to appreciate what God is doing right now. We get consumed by the desire to get to the next phase of life that we miss the miracles happening in our present circumstances. Every day is an opportunity to trust God, to see His faithfulness in the small things, and to recognize that He is working in the here and now. Trusting God's plan means that we start to live with purpose. When we know that God has a plan for our lives, we no longer live in the shadows of doubt or uncertainty. We can walk with confidence, knowing that the Creator of the universe has a specific purpose for us. We begin to see our lives as more than just a series of random events. Each moment, each encounter, each opportunity is part of God's divine purpose. This awareness gives us peace, joy, and hope, even in the most challenging seasons of life. As we trust in God's plan, we also begin to see His hand in our past. It's easy to look back on our lives and see the mistakes we made or the missed opportunities. But God has a way of redeeming everything. He takes our past, no matter how painful or regretful it may be, and uses it for His glory. He doesn't waste any of our experiences, even the ones that seem like failures. Instead, He uses them to shape us, to teach us, and to position us for the future He has prepared for us. God is not limited by time. He can take what was meant for harm and turn it around for good. He can take the broken pieces of your past and create something beautiful. Trusting God means believing that He can redeem every situation, no matter how messy it may seem. It means looking back at your life and recognizing that God was with you through every trial, every heartache, and every success. He was shaping you all along, preparing you for this very moment. Trust is also essential in relationships. The more we trust God with our lives, the more we are able to trust others. When we know that God is in control, we can let go of the fear that often holds us back in relationships. Trusting God gives us the courage to love freely, to forgive quickly, and to be vulnerable with others. It's when we trust God's plan that we are able to walk in the fullness of the relationships He has designed for us. We stop relying on others for our worth and validation, and we find our identity in Christ alone. This allows us to love others unconditionally and to create strong, meaningful connections with those around us. Trusting God's plan also involves trusting His protection. There will be times when you feel vulnerable or threatened by the circumstances around you. You may face situations that feel overwhelming or unsafe, but God promises to be your refuge and your fortress. He is your protector, and no weapon formed against you will prosper. When you trust in His protection, you can walk through life with confidence, knowing that He is shielding you from harm. Even when you face trials, you can be assured that God is with you, working all things together for your good. One of the most profound aspects of trusting God is knowing that He is a good Father. He loves you with an everlasting love, and He will never lead you astray. His plan for your life is full of hope and purpose. When you trust in Him, you are aligning yourself with the heart of the Father, and that is the safest place to be. No matter what you face in life, you can rest in the truth that God's plan for you is always for your good. He has good things in store for you, and He will lead you into them as you trust in Him with all your heart. When you trust in God's plan, it changes everything. You begin to live with a sense of purpose and peace that transcends understanding. You stop striving and start surrendering. You stop fearing the future and start trusting the one who holds it in His hands. And when you do, you'll see His faithfulness in ways that will blow your mind. Trust His plan, trust His timing, and trust His love for you. The journey of trust is never a straight path. It is often filled with twists and turns that challenge our understanding of God's purpose. There will be moments when the road ahead seems unclear, when obstacles appear that we did not anticipate, and when our patience is tested to its limits. But in those moments, we must remember that God is not caught off guard by our circumstances. He is sovereign, and nothing takes him by surprise. The very things we fear may be the tools he is using to shape us. The very struggles that seem insurmountable are the ones that God is using to build our strength and character. Trusting in God's plan means embracing the journey even when it feels uncertain. It means recognizing that our understanding is limited and that God sees the bigger picture. We often try to figure out the why behind everything that happens in our lives. We want to know why things go wrong, why we experience pain, and why we face hardships. But the truth is, God does not owe us an explanation. His ways are higher than ours, and His understanding surpasses anything we can fathom. Our role is not to understand every detail of the plan. It is to trust that the one who holds the plan is faithful. In the Bible, we see countless examples of people who had to trust God in ways that seemed impossible. Think of Abraham, who was asked to sacrifice his son Isaac. Abraham did not understand why God would ask him to do such a thing, but he trusted God's plan even when it did not make sense. God's plan for Abraham involved testing his faith, but it also involved a blessing beyond measure. Through Abraham's obedience, God made a covenant with him that would last for generations. The testing of Abraham's trust was not in vain, but part of a larger plan that would bless not only Abraham but the entire world. Similarly, consider the story of Job. Job's life was filled with suffering, and he did not understand why he was enduring such pain. He lost his wealth, his health, and his family, and yet, in the midst of it all, Job continued to trust God. Job's trust was not based on understanding or circumstances, but on a deep faith in the character of God. And in the end, God restored Job's life and gave him even more than he had before. Job's story is a powerful reminder that trusting God's plan does not always mean immediate relief or answers, but it does mean that God is working behind the scenes, orchestrating something greater than we can see. In our own lives, we will face moments where we don't have the answers. We will walk through seasons where it feels like everything is falling apart. But it is in those seasons that God is refining us. He is teaching us to rely on Him more fully, to lean into His strength, and to surrender our control. We are not meant to navigate this life alone. God has promised to be with us every step of the way. His presence is our comfort, His promises are our anchor, and His love is our strength. When we trust in God's plan, we are also trusting in His timing. Timing is often the hardest part of trusting. We live in a world that values instant gratification, where we want everything now, and we often struggle with waiting. But God's timing is perfect. He does not work on our timeline, and He does not conform to our expectations. His plan is being unfolded in His time, not ours. And while we wait, we are being prepared. Waiting is not passive, it is an active process. We are growing in character, in faith, and in patience. The waiting period is not wasted time, it is a time of refinement. God is not in a hurry, and He does not want us to be either. He is doing a deep work in our hearts during the waiting seasons, shaping us for the future He has planned. The process may be uncomfortable, but it is necessary. We must trust that every moment is working together for our good, even when it feels like we are standing still. There is a beauty in the waiting, a purpose in the pause. It is in the quiet moments of waiting that we learn to hear God's voice more clearly, and it is in those moments that we are prepared for the next step. Trusting God's plan also requires us to trust in His provision. We may find ourselves in situations where we feel like we don't have enough resources, enough strength, enough wisdom. But God is Jehovah Jireh, our provider. He has promised to supply all our needs according to His riches in glory. When we trust in His provision, we step out of the realm of scarcity and into the abundance of His grace. We stop relying on our own resources and start relying on His limitless supply. God is more than able to meet our needs, and He does so in ways that we often don't expect. Just as He provided for the Israelites in the wilderness, He will provide for us in ways that will leave us in awe of His faithfulness. The provision of God is not just material, but spiritual as well. In times of struggle, God provides peace that passes all understanding. When we are weary, He provides rest for our souls. When we are uncertain, He provides wisdom. Trusting God's provision means that we no longer try to control our circumstances or solve our problems on our own. We recognize that He is our ultimate source, and we surrender our needs to Him. As we continue to trust in God's plan, we also begin to trust in His power. God is all-powerful. There is nothing too hard for Him. When we face situations that seem impossible, we must remember that God is able to do exceedingly, abundantly above all that we ask or think. His power is limitless, and He is more than able to accomplish His purposes in our lives. Trusting in God's power means that we no longer rely on our own strength or ability to change our circumstances. We recognize that we are weak, but He is strong. And when we trust in His power, we open ourselves up to miracles, to supernatural breakthroughs, and to the extraordinary things He wants to do in and through us. Trusting God's plan is also about trusting in His love. The foundation of trust is rooted in love. We trust God because we know He loves us with an everlasting love. His love is unconditional, unchanging, and unfailing. When we face difficult situations, we may question many things, but we can always be sure of one thing: God loves us. His love is the anchor that holds us steady through the storms of life. When we trust in His love, we know that He will never leave us or forsake us. His love is the constant in a world that is ever changing. In every season of life, whether in moments of abundance or times of lack, we can trust that God's love is unwavering. He loves us not for what we do, but for who we are. He loves us in our brokenness, in our failures, and in our successes. His love is the foundation of everything He does, and His plan for our lives is rooted in that love. When we trust in His love, we can rest in the knowledge that He is always working for our good, even when we don't understand what's happening. The most powerful aspect of trusting in God's plan is that it draws us closer to Him. Trust is not just a mental decision, it is a relational one. When we trust God, we are choosing to deepen our relationship with Him. Trusting in God's plan means that we are placing our hearts in His hands, knowing that He will guide us, protect us, and lead us to the place He has prepared for us. It is in trusting Him that we experience His presence more intimately, His peace more deeply, and His joy more abundantly. Trusting in God's plan is not a one-time decision, it is a daily choice to walk with Him, to listen to His voice, and to follow where He leads. When we trust God's plan, we are also giving Him the glory for the work He is doing in our lives. We recognize that everything we have, everything we are, and everything we will become is because of His grace. We surrender our pride, our need for recognition, and our desire for control. We acknowledge that God is the one who is orchestrating our lives, and we give Him all the honor and praise for what He has done and will continue to do. Trusting God's plan is not always easy, but it is always worth it. It requires surrender, patience, faith, and perseverance. But as we trust Him, we are transformed. We are shaped into the people God has created us to be. And as we walk in His plan, we experience a peace that surpasses understanding, a joy that comes from knowing we are walking in His purpose, and a confidence that no matter what happens, God is in control. His plan is perfect, and His timing is impeccable. And when we trust in His plan, we can rest assured that we are exactly where we are meant to be, and we are headed exactly where He has prepared for us. In the journey of life, trusting God's plan is not always easy, but it is the most essential decision we can make. It requires surrendering our control, embracing the unknown, and believing that God's love, wisdom, and timing are always perfect. Through trials, doubts, and struggles, we are shaped and refined by His hand. Like those who trusted before us, our obedience to His plan unlocks blessings and growth that we cannot imagine. Even in moments of uncertainty, we must hold firm to the truth that God sees the bigger picture. His plans are designed for our ultimate good, and every step, whether difficult or easy, is part of a divine purpose. As we trust Him, we grow closer to Him, experience His provision, and step into the destiny He has set for us. In the end, we will see that His plan was worth the wait, the trust, and the journey.